Okay. Here we are at Sunset Point, just a few minutes before sunset. See the amphitheater shape here. And in the middle there is Sunrise Point, where you see the forest, the woods, the pine trees kind of taper to the right there. Sunrise Point. Another shot from Sunrise Point. And this is my second day on a 6-day trip throughout southern Utah and northern Arizona, and we're basically going to be going progressively lower in elevation, but also progressively older geologically. So one thing, so out of the 5 major national parks of Utah, Bryce Canyon is the one that's at the highest elevation, and because of that, it also does not really get that hot. Okay, it rarely gets to 90 here on the rim, as we are about over 7,000 feet above sea level. And this is really not a canyon. Bryce Canyon National Park is actually a series of amphitheaters where there's sort of a staircase of rock formations. And out of all the national parks in Utah, Bryce Canyon being at the highest is also the youngest. This is rock types that come from after the dinosaurs, so Cenozoic. So it's also more crumbly. This kind of rock is obviously a lot softer. That's why you have all the hoodoos and all the name of all these columns here. Because this kind of rock weathers more easily. It has more cracks, or what are technically called joints. Even when you go up to any of these hoodoos, you can see a lot of cracks and fractures, and so you have a lot more weathering going on. So unlike later today, we're going to be going down to Zion, and of course Zion is known for having a lot of big, tall, sheer cliffs. There you have a few major joints, but that type of rock is a little bit more solid. It doesn't really weather as easily. So you have fewer cracks or fewer joints. So instead of these pillars or columns or hoodoos that look like an ancient temple, the way you see in Bryce Canyon, at Zion you have big sheer cliffs. So one thing also is that one might assume that all the national parks and monuments in Utah are in a desert environment, but we're really not in a desert environment here at all. You just see a lot of barren rock from a lot of erosion. Okay. Off in the distance, the rims of the plateaus are all covered in forest, mostly ponderosa pine forest. And you do see a lot of ponderosa pine and Douglas fir down in the ravines where there is a little bit more soil. So yeah, the lowest elevation here in Bryce Canyon, like down to the very base, is actually about the same elevation as the highest points in Zion. And also the oldest geologic layers here are basically the youngest ones at Zion. Okay. So a couple other things also, yeah, on the rim you will find a lot of mule deer, pronghorn antelope, an endangered species of prairie dog called the Utah prairie dog. So as far as hiking trails, there is an 8-mile trail called the Fairyland Loop Trail. I took this when I was here last time, 3 years ago in 2016. It's a great trail, but you need 4 to 5 hours to do that. If you only have a little bit of time, like say an hour and a half to 2 hours, doing the Queen's Garden and Navajo Loop Trail combo is a great trail to do.
Pass immigration legislation, she will...
So here we are. This is the Sevier River on the Paunsaugunt Plateau, just west of Bryce Canyon. So we're just a little west of the national park, and this is a perfect example of a meandering river. You can see a lot of swallows flying overhead, catching a lot of bugs over the river. But you can see the middle part of the river here, which is flowing the fastest. And you can see up ahead over there is a point bar and another point bar on the other side. And so that's where there's more deposition and there's more erosion on that side because the current is flowing stronger and causing more erosion. So that means that the river is going to be shifting a little bit more that way over time, and that bend over there is going to be more exaggerated going over that way. I've actually seen muskrats here three years ago when I was visiting Bryce Canyon. So we're going to take a look at the other side of the river now. And here we are on the other side of the Sevier River. So again, here you can see the currents being fastest sort of in the middle, more so than on the sides here. And of course you can see all the swallows flying overhead. And there you can see a cut bank and a point bar. All the driftwood, or not driftwood, but a lot of down logs. And then of course over on the other side there, you can also see another point bar and cut bank. So over time, if left to its own devices, that bend in the river is going to be shifting more this way, and this bend in the river is going to be shifting more that way. So again, perfect example of a meandering river in a high elevation valley in Utah. Perfect example of a meandering river, the Sevier River just west of Bryce Canyon National Park. So muskrat in the Sevier River. There he goes. Hi, and welcome back. So here we are at our first stop in Zion National Park. On the east side of the national park, the road that comes in from the east. And what you see behind me is a landmark known as Checkerboard Mesa. And what this is one of the finest examples of cross-bedding sandstone, cross-bedded sandstone. And you can actually find a lot of cross-bedded sandstone throughout Zion National Park, but this is really kind of one of the best examples behind me. And you can see the crisscrossing patterns of the different layers of sandstone. Well, that represents prehistoric sand dunes from, hundreds of millions of years ago. This rock here is Mesozoic, so it was like dinosaur era sandstone. And the different tilted layers represents the orientation of how sand dunes would form over time from accumulated sand little by little. And then represents a certain direction that the wind was blowing at the time. And then if the wind changed, then the dunes would pile up in a different direction. And then that would get preserved when another sand dune would start to accumulate on top of that one. So where you see this cross-hatching pattern throughout Zion National Park especially, but in other places as well throughout the southern Utah, this is examples of this, perfect example of this cross-bedded sandstone. So later on today and tomorrow we're going to be going through various places in the national park. It is a Friday afternoon. It's shuttle only since the park is pretty much full. And here I am at Weeping Rock. This is another place where we have these hanging gardens of columbines and maidenhair ferns, violets, and some other kinds of plants that are fed from groundwater seeping through the Navajo sandstone, hitting the layer of the shale, the Kayenta or Wingate formation, and that's where the weeping comes from, the dripping water that is constantly coming down. And here we can see the water dripping from spring-fed water dripping from the cliff. Below where the water is dripping is rock layer that is impermeable to water flow. So water flowing through that upper rock layer you see essentially is forced to drip out of the cliffside. And here we are at the lower Emerald Pool of the Emerald Pool Trail here at Zion. There's actually 3 levels of emerald pools, basically pools in the sandstone where erosion has occurred. Unfortunately, the middle and upper pools are closed due to rock falls that occurred this past spring from heavy rainfall. But you can see the water dripping down over here from the middle pool is coming down to the lower pool. You can see the muddy water right down there of the creek that flows into the Virgin River, and way off in the distance up there you can also see some other more waterfall. Now you also see lines of vegetation, spring-fed vegetation like you see right over here. That is from, again, groundwater percolating through the sandstone layer and then hitting the layer of what they call Mount Kepi shale, which is kind of a mudstone or shale, so the water can't soak through there anymore, so therefore it's forced to come out. And it's also a weaker rock, so it gets worn away. The vegetation along this trail is a lot of cottonwoods, Fremont cottonwoods, velvet ash, box elder, so all kinds of riparian trees. Off in the distance over there you do see some Douglas fir and some ponderosa pine. And just behind me over here you see a lot of grapevine. There's also a lot of this datura, which is Jimson weed. So with that, our next stop is going to be Angel's Landing. Mule deer grazing right at the Westridge trailhead on the way to Angel's Landing. There he goes. Well, I made it to the top of Angel's Landing. This is quite a grueling hike. This is the second time I've hiked this. I did it 3 years ago in May when it was a little cooler. So yeah, it was definitely a little challenging. Definitely just kind of lied on a rock for about 20 minutes to rest. So here we are looking upstream, the Virgin River down there, and in that direction over there is the Narrows and what they call the Temple of Sinueva. That unfortunately is closed due to high runoff, but I will be going on the little short riverside walk and at least maybe wading in the Virgin River come tomorrow morning. So again, the sheer cliffs here, and more reflective of some massive joints and some massive sandstone. And so yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow on our next leg of the journey in Zion National Park. See you then. And here we are along the riverside walk along the Virgin River here, heading toward the Narrows, which is closed because the power of this river, when it gets to 150 cubic feet per second, they do have to close it. Now the reason why you have the Narrows here, why it's such a narrow slot canyon when you get back up there, upstream, is that the river up there is cutting through just the Navajo sandstone, which is harder sandstone, and the rest of the Zion Canyon, which is much broader, has a broader valley bottom to it, is cutting through that softer Wingates and Cayente shale, which is more erodible. But when it's confined in this harder Navajo sandstone, when there's even a little bit of lateral undercutting, you have chunks of rock that basically collapse, and that maintains the vertical character of the Narrows. if it cuts any deeper and over time if the river down cuts into the canyon even more and gets to that softer layers of shale, then it'll start to resemble a much broader valley. So it's actually quite cool here. Right now in the Zion Canyon is about 80, it's about 80 something degrees. It's about close to noon, but here it's a lot cooler because the very towering cliffs are shading us very well. So with that, I'll see you next time. It's feels a little more hidden.